Firstly, can I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past and present. Can I also acknowledge any Aboriginal people here today. I note that the Minister for Transport, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian, was here earlier and addressed you in relation to a number of areas, so it was good to see her. It is an honour for me to address the Community Transport Organisation 2014 conference. It's actually my first time addressing this conference as Minister for Ageing and Minister for Disability Services. I thank the New South Wales Community Transport Organisation, its Chief Executive Officer Sonia Phillips and Chairperson Bethany Simons for the invitation to attend today's event. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the importance of the services you provide. Community transport enables people with disability and our ageing population to remain engaged and active within our communities. It is clearly invaluable work that you undertake. The theme of today's conference, Positioning for Tomorrow, Catching the Next Wave, is timely and relevant as it reflects the current reforms in New South Wales and across Australia. This includes the National Disability Insurance Scheme, NDIS, and the Commonwealth Aged Care reforms. This is a time of change, and this brings both significant challenges and significant opportunities for your organisations and the people you support. Challenges in responding to these changes and adapting your services, but at the same time, opportunities to prepare your services for the future and improve the way you support people and your communities. Today I'd like to focus on the National Disability Insurance Scheme and how this policy is changing the way we provide disability services. I know that you, as community transport providers, will be impacted by the NDIS. I also know that with the change of this nature, they'll be concerned about what the future holds. The NDIS is an overdue reform that will deliver a more person-centred service system and an inclusive, rights-based approach to service delivery for people with disability and their families. It is the most significant social reform in Australia for over 30 years. The New South Wales Government is well aware that the success of the NDIS is dependent upon the capacity of the non-government sector to transition to person-centred disability services and individualised budgets. However, we also recognise that the non-government sector is best placed to enhance new approaches to innovate and to evolve to create a robust disability sector that is responsive to the significant growth and changes in consumer demand and to the expectations that will be generated by the NDIS. I have full confidence in the non-government sector and its capacity to provide high-quality supports to people with disability across New South Wales. We're committed to working in partnership with service providers to realise the expansion and enhancement of the disability service system in New South Wales. In August 2014, the Disability Inclusion Bill 2014, which I introduced into Parliament, was passed by the New South Wales Parliament and became the Disability Inclusion Act. The Act will have a meaningful impact on the lives of people with disability, their families and carers. It was designed to put people with disability at the centre of decision making, giving them greater choice and control over the supports they receive. It commits the New South Wales Government to making our communities more inclusive and accessible for people with disability now and into the future. It is also an instrument of social change. It affirms that people with disability have the same human rights as other people and promotes the inclusion of people with disability in the community by establishing a strong, outcomes-focused approach to whole-of-government strategies. The Act is an important milestone in the rollout of the NDIS. We have recently celebrated another great milestone of the NDIS rollout, the one-year anniversary of the NDIS at the Hunter launch site. As of 31 July 2014, a total of 2,384 support plans have been approved in the Hunter trial site for people with disability living in the local areas of Newcastle and, as of 1 July this year, Lake Macquarie. From 1 July 2015, NDIS will also become accessible to people with disability in the local government area of Maitland, and progressive rollout across New South Wales will commence in July 2016. Under the agreement with the Commonwealth, up to 10,000 participants will receive NDIS support in the launch site by June 2016. Feedback from participants in the Hunter NDIS launch site has been overwhelmingly positive. Many participants are telling us that the NDIS is giving them greater choice and control over their supports and has dramatically changed their lives for the better. Significant work still needs to be done to refine the scheme and improve the capability and capacity of the NDIA, and lessons from trial sites across Australia will inform planning and implementation for the rollout of the full scheme. We've also heard stories of service providers in the Hunter actively responding to the changing service environment and committing to revolutionary approaches to support people with disability to achieve their goals. We are seeing organisations collaborating, creating consortia and partnerships in order to enhance the quality of services delivered to clients. Service providers are implementing innovative arrangements which place people with disability firmly at the centre of decision making and enabling them to exercise choice and control over the nature of their supports and how these supports are delivered. An example of this is the recent partnership developed between several community disability services and local accounting firm. This partnership allows disability services to outsource their financial systems, enabling them to focus on service delivery while ensuring they have ongoing financial security. It also results in the private sector business becoming aware of the needs of people with disability, the importance of community inclusion, and the aims of the NDIS. Naturally, individuals and service providers have also identified a number of challenges related to the design and rollout of the scheme. I recognise that service providers are facing a range of difficulties in preparing for the NDIS and the broader disability reforms. I commend all our service providers for continuing to deliver services and supports in such challenging circumstances. I understand that these reforms can be particularly challenging for community transport providers, as they provide services at the nexus of aged care, healthcare, and disability services. We are listening to the feedback and learning from these experiences, and will apply this knowledge to the broader rollout across New South Wales during the trial periods. I'd like to assure all community transport providers here today that we recognise the value of community transport services. The Productivity Commission, which made the case for the NDIS, recognised this and lists transport as a key enabler. As a result, it's considered an essential service by the National Disability Insurance Agency, which is responsible for allocating individual packages. I recognise the transition to a self-directed disability system will require some organisations to change their business models, operational systems and governance arrangements, in addition to undertaking significant workforce planning and development. We want our organisations to be in the best position to enter the new operating environment with readiness and enthusiasm. I urge community transport providers to take advantage of the numerous supports and practical resources available through the Industry Development Fund, administered in partnership by Ageing, Disability and Home Care, ADIC, and the National Disability Services New South Wales, NDS. I'm pleased to note that about 50 community transport services have already received assistance via the Industry Development Fund to date. The supports available under the Industry Development Fund will assist community transport providers in managing the parallel Commonwealth aged care reforms, especially the move towards consumer-directed care and greater accessibility in aged care funding arrangements. I would like to recognise the role that Community Transport Organisation has played and continues to play in working with the sector as they prepare for the NDIS. I would also like to commend the responsiveness that service providers have shown so far in meeting the challenges of the NDIS reforms. The New South Wales Government is fully committed to the implementation of the NDIS across New South Wales by 2018. We'll continue working in partnership with the non-government organisation sector, including transport organisation members, to ensure the sector has the capacity to meet the challenges ahead. As I said before, this is a huge social reform that puts people with disability in control of their own supports, and through this, greater control of their lives and situations. I'm confident that together we will achieve a seamless statewide transition to ensure that the future is bright for people with disability, their families and carers. It is an exciting time for people with disability, service providers and the New South Wales community. I look forward to hearing more about the ideas shared, discussion generated and the recommendation and outcomes from this conference, so we can take those back and with you work on ensuring the seamless transition. Thank you.
Good morning, Minister. My name is Margaret Burns. I'm from Newcastle Community Transport, so we were sort of first cab off the rank for New South Wales. Now, I fully support the NDIS and I welcome people with a disability being more included in the community, but I do have a concern. The transport allowance, which is the newest way that they're getting the funding, ranges from $28 per week to $47. There's 3 different tiers. Most of our clients do not work part-time or study part-time, or work full-time or study full-time, so most of them would be on tier 1, which is $28 a week. Now, this then begs the question, with that $28, they have to use that for transport for a week. Now, if they come to me, I can no longer provide subsidised transport. So the cost of their transport might take up that whole $28 for one trip. The cost of the transport might be over that. If they use a taxi, it's usually going to be over that, because it's like $2.20 something per kilometre. Is the Minister aware of this? And if transport is an essential service, are they going to review the costings for the transport allowance?
Look, thank you for that question. I've been here for almost an hour and that's the 4th time I've received that question. Clearly it is something I'm aware of, and clearly it's an area that is vital and one that I'm continuing discussions with the Commonwealth. As I indicated, we are in early stages as far as the trial is concerned. We've signed up approximately 2,500 people to their plans, and of which a portion of that, of course, relates to the area of community transport. As we continue the trial over the first 10,000 to be signed up, we will obtain more feedback. Now, community transport, as well as a few other areas, are areas where the issue of costs is in continual discussion between the states and the Commonwealth. We have our views, they have their views, and as we obtain the research coming out through the trial periods, we've been able to present to the Commonwealth that additional funding is required in a number of areas, including community transport. If I could also take a second part to your answer from doing the mathematics. What we have to remember first and foremost is that in New South Wales, my entire budget for all disability services is $2.7 billion. By 2018, that budget under the NDIA between the partnership of the state and Commonwealth goes to $6.4 billion, a doubling and more than doubling of the actual funding. Also, the current people receiving funding in one form or another, including clients within the community transport system, is 93,000 people. By 2018, that will extend to 140,000 people. So there'll be more money within the market, if I can use that term. There'll be more customers, clients within the market, another 50,000. That in itself will generate an increase in demand for services. So we as a government, in our negotiations, have to ensure that not only do you continue to exist to be able to provide the services in the proper economic framework and receiving the appropriate funding to do it, but we also have to ensure that you're in a position to increase your services within the sector to meet the additional demands that will come on your services by those additional people receiving funding.
What happens if there's a change of government?
Nothing changes, and the fact that there
Sorry.
was... That's a good question. As you know, we signed up the first state under the NDIS. We signed it with the then Gillard government. When the new Abbott government came in, nothing changed. Everything was 100% confirmed. The heads of agreement are binding on each and every government that goes through. And I can also indicate this. You know, I think I'm one of the luckiest ministers out there because of all of the portfolios. When it comes to disability services, when it comes to our seniors, when it comes to our vulnerable, it has always been a bipartisan approach. So whether it's Labor, Liberal, National, Federal, State, there's always been a bipartisan approach, and that's why the NDIS actually got off the ground. Everyone supported it.
There's another question from this lady down here.
You only asked Gladys one question, I'm honoured.
My name is Robin Houston from Lake Macquarie Community Transport, and we're also in the trial.
You started on the 1st of July, so we're awaiting many of the results in this short period.
Well, let me say, we appreciate the fact that it's not a closed book. We appreciate the fact you're taking all our comments into consideration, and we'd like to commend you for working with us and New South Wales, Transport for New South Wales also have been very supportive. I think what we're concerned about is it's happening to us now, and we have to make our decisions based on the here and now. So, with the information received, we'd appreciate just a continuing input as to how things are going, if we could ask that of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and it works both ways. I mean, I need to hear from you the reports that are coming back to me. I have an update each and every week in relation to every aspect relating to the NDIS. Chelsea, who's sitting directly behind you, who'll wave to you in a moment, from my office, is in fact organising a meeting where sometime within the next 4 weeks I will be meeting with community transport participants in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie, because I also need to hear the feedback from you. You're at the ground level, you're seeing a day, you're understanding what the changes are occurring in your systems. I need to be able to ensure that you survive. That is my priority. Because if I want to ensure that people with disability obtain the same seamless services, then I need to ensure that each and every service provider is able to continue to provide that same seamless services.
Well, on behalf of Newcastle and ourselves, thank you very much. We'd like that open door policy.
And I look forward to seeing you within the next 4 weeks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Lynn Bright from South West Community Transport. Just, you referred to the Productivity Commission. Within that, there was a recommendation bulk billing of bulk funding for community transport and the continuation of that. Has that been taken into consideration?
Look, it was taken into consideration, as was a number of areas. But ultimately, the heads of agreement that was finally determined was that people with disability should have complete control over the services they want, the services they need, the services they choose. And so on that basis, it was determined that all services to be provided will be provided to the person with disabilities who would pay for those in accordance with their plan. There really will be no bulk billing of services at this stage. Now, the reason I say at this stage is, again, we're still in a trial cycle. We're still awaiting to see the reports, and if adjustments need to be made, then the NDIA will be required to make those adjustments. Can't wait to tell Gladys I've got more questions than her.
Has anybody got any more questions?
There's a gentleman over there.
Okie dokie. It's like an auction, isn't it?
I hope I'm not being auctioned.
Hello, it's Stephen from Coast and Country Community Services, and I have a question around regional and rural and remote.
Yes.
At this stage, there's 3 levels of funding, and the remote and very remote seems to be the only areas that are going to receive any additional funding on top of their transport. And if you go to the ABS website and have a look where those areas are, as Gladys mentioned before, there's 6 million trips or 600,000 trips done in rural areas. There seems to be a vast difference of what should be out there.
In my 12 months as a Minister, apart from spending as much time as I can possibly within the Hunter launch, I have been spending a huge amount going around regional and rural. They have the most serious concerns, and I understand that. It's always great to say people will have choice and control, but at the same time the services have to be within those regions and have to be able to survive within those regions. The purpose of the trial was to choose throughout all of Australia trial sites in different states that would actually match almost every possible area in any state. And so you've got the other states having some trial sites within their regional rural. We of course have Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Maitland. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of those are absolute rural, but clearly they are regional. So again, the information that's coming in, not just from our trial sites, but more importantly, the other states, is being taken into account by the NDIA, and the pricing that is to be applicable to these areas, to these services, is the main issue of contention that is being discussed continually by the NDIA board and the states and the service providers. The NDS is doing quite an extensive amount of work in relation to this area, representing their service providers. So it's still early days for me to be able to say to you what the final outcome will be in relation to all services being provided in the regional and rural areas, other than what is currently on the table, and that's being tweaked. Sorry.
Those ABS maps that NDIS provide the link to, which determine rural, remote and regional, if you have a look at the map for the far south coast, which is where I'm from, Baker Community Transport, it's regional all the way to the state border. It doesn't take into account any of the distances that we need to travel to provide service to a client. If you read the NDIS literature, it says that loadings will only be provided to rural and remote costs of transport.
Yes.
Which means that effectively all of the far south coast isn't eligible for any loadings. Is NDIS going to stick with using those ABS maps, or are they going to develop different definitions of rural and remote?
That's a question that I've raised with the federal government, and a question that it's continually raised with me as I go around. You know, one of the advantages of also being the Minister for the Illawarra is that I'm getting asked those same questions in certain parts of just the Illawarra and of course the adjoining South Coast area. At this stage, it's being looked at. That's the best I can tell you, because again, we're still in the trial side. Any feedback that you would like to give to me, send to me, is something that I'm more than happy to be knocking on the NDIS doors and saying, look, you know, this is not just coming from me, this is coming from my areas, this is coming from, you know, our service providers. They have concerns in relation to this. We need to be discussing this. So please feel free to send me any information you can.
While I've got the microphone, just one other question. What's happening with the clients that don't get a package at the end of the day?
Sorry, I can't.
What's happening to the clients who don't get a package at the end of the day with the NDIS?
Look, that's a very good question. The starting point is this. We have 93,000 clients who currently receive funding through ADIC. That is going to increase to 140,000. So clearly, if every one of the 93,000 clients receives the package, there is an additional 50,000 who've never received the package that will be receiving the package. So that's the great news. Of the first intake through the trial side, there were a number who were receiving ADIC funding who did not receive a package. There were quite a number who were not receiving ADIC funding who did receive a package. We went back to the Commonwealth and told them we did not accept the numbers that did not receive a package. We didn't accept those that were told you don't meet the criteria. They went back through a second look, and quite a number of them ultimately received a package. There are still some who haven't, and we're examining that very carefully to understand why we felt that they were eligible to be funded, but under the NDIA scheme, they're not being funded. So again, that's part of the tweaking that we need to go through. But ultimately, the great news is that there are 50,000 additional packages out there for people who never received funding previously.
So is every disability pension going to be a package?
No. Disability pension is very different from the National Disability Insurance Scheme packages. You can receive a disability pension because of your age and the fact that you're unable to work, the fact that you have a bad back, if I can use that analogy, the fact that your doctor has turned around and provided you with medical evidence. You can receive a federal government disability pension, completely separate from the NDIS. The NDIS will ultimately result in 140,000 people receiving an NDIS support package, funding package. Okay.
Is that, yep, is everybody finished?
Thank you, everyone. Look, if I could just say this to you, you know, my door is open. I've met many of you in my first 12 months as Minister. I'm very keen to always meet. I'm always keen to hear your stories, your concerns, because that helps me to take it back to the department, that helps me take it back to the Commonwealth and the NDIA agency, because, as I said, the aim is to have a seamless transition, and the aim is to ultimately ensure that our clients, your clients, are best served under the new NDIS. Thank you very much for
So
your
would
time.
you like to give them your phone numbers so that you have your home phone number and then your mobile?
You can Google and you'll have every one of my details when you Google my name.
Thank you very much, John.